This is Christian Buckley, and I'm here today talking with Mr. Bill Baer. Bill.
Hey, great. Thanks for having me. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. So now that you've completely abandoned all of your roots in the SharePoint space and gone and done something else, I mean, who knows what you're doing. Why don't you talk about what you're up to lately, what your new role is, and what you're focused on?
Yeah, so my day-to-day focus in 4 letters is MSAI, which is Microsoft Search, Assistant, and Intelligence. So, basically on a day-to-day basis, probably 90% of my focus is on Microsoft Search, our new search experience that we introduced to Microsoft 365. And then the other 10% is working on our assistant strategy. And for assistant, easy way to think about that is Cortana.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. We used to always, when we talk about search, it was usually in the SharePoint world. It was usually there was a joke involved, but it's funny. It's like that you've moved to a newer version of SharePoint. The search would work a little bit better. But it's a SharePoint. It's not tied to any specific platform. There's been just historically a fundamental problem in knowledge management, information management with search, and search is fundamental to getting value out of any information management system.
Oh yeah, I think what we came to recognize is to kind of carry on what you had mentioned is not only were our search experiences not necessarily the best, and they incrementally improved over the course of time. Particularly with SharePoint, we made a ton of progress with the acquisition of FAST and then embedding that engine into 2013. But really, when we looked back and took that big picture view of where search was, we didn't have at Microsoft what we would consider or define as a coherent search experience, meaning that if you were trying to rationalize results from multiple data sets, so if you wanted to find a conversation in Yammer, you would go to Yammer and search in Yammer and you'd locate that conversation. But, what if there's a file that has some relationship to that conversation? So, now you're searching in SharePoint or OneDrive. Very similar with Teams. You're looking for a Teams conversation, and there may be email messages, file attachments, and a bunch of other data, that can help you from a productivity perspective. But there was really no search box or one search box to rule them all.
It was always been a very fragmented. I mean, even from a product standpoint, I don't think until more recently that there was even a centralized, a Microsoft approach to solving search problems. It was done around each of the different products or workloads.
Yeah, it was very fragmented, very disparate and isolated. You kind of had those data islands, and you had to scour each island individually to find what you need. But so we sat down about 1.5 years ago and said we need a new search strategy. One that's coherent across all of our Microsoft 365 apps and services. But to a certain extent, we also want it to be ubiquitous. So not only is it available across all of our apps and services, but then we started looking at these additive endpoints for search, Bing and Edge, and the Windows search box in particular. So we started to think about breadth. At the same time, we were thinking about depth. And then one of the key decisions we made too is over the course of the last, 20, 30, 40 years, search has been stuck in a hamster wheel in respect to how people were approaching it. And this is, pretty much industry-wide. I think for the longest time, the industry was really focused on relevancy. And that was kind of the key objective. Let's deliver more and more relevant results. But just being natural and actionable took less priority than being relevant. So when we embarked on this journey, not only did we want relevancy as, to be critical, but we also wanted search to be meaningful. So we kind of moved search from being a utility to being a productivity tool. And, the idea behind that is via search, you should be able to complete an expense report, or maybe book a room, or find free time on somebody's calendar, or alternatively create a task based on the results of your search. So not just bookmarking a search result so you can research it later, but actually making a task of it, adding a to-do, or creating an email from those results. So that's kind of the how we're thinking about Microsoft Search as we move forward. So let's nail the fundamentals. Let's ensure that it's hyper relevant and meaningful, and differentiating, but also let's take it from utility to productivity tool.
Well, I like that in the whole concept of like the action card. So
Yeah.
again, it's moving beyond like, okay, what is what is a customer, what is a user asking of the technology to go and do versus what's the end user really trying to accomplish?
Mm-hmm.
And it may be that, hey, they're requesting this content, but they want to take that next step. You made me think of some of the earlier days of Bing. And there was a desire to make one of the initiatives, I think is around 2007, 2008 timeframe, where the decision was made to make Bing the best search engine for shopping. And it was kind of along those lines. It was people are coming in and they're searching for product.
Yeah.
Well, they don't want to just find the information and it'd be dumb information results. They want to then take that next step. And so what can we do to help that process and improve the sales process of products and services through Baer?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very, very similar approach. Once you have your result, then what? You were searching with purpose in most cases. You were looking for information. There was a purpose for that, and how can we turn that into something actionable? So you searched with a purpose. Now let's help you fulfill your objective by integrating those experiences, those needs, those actions into the results themselves. And that's the approach as we move forward that we're going to be taking with Microsoft Search. Again, making it more actionable, making it a true productivity tool, and enabling people to accomplish more via search.
Well, one of the other mistakes, I think this kind of adds to what you've just stated, the approach of going in and building out a search experience around like best bets and another kind of more tailored or catered, search experiences. It's really kind of different. What that does, not that that's a bad thing. If I've got my intranet portal and my end users are coming in, they're really only doing kind of 5 different main things, and you want to give them these tailored experiences for each of the 5 primary reasons that people are going in to my environment. But when you're talking about information systems and you have, if you're creating a catered experience, as part of that catered experience, you're in effect, I think a downside of that is that you're often limiting then the long tail of content, of other associated content. So out of that, and that's something I think Microsoft has understood for years, and where you get a lot of the advances around the Microsoft Graph to be able to go and link and add context to that long tail of content to make that also, searchable, findable within the system. There's a lot of really cool features that are coming out that are enabled because of that approach and because of the graph. So I'm assuming that plays a pretty large part in the way that you're looking at these problems.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's definitely a big part of the way that we're approaching the problem space. And then, even beyond that, we really want search to be more natural. We want people to engage with a search engine much in the same way they would have a conversation with somebody. If I approached you on the street and I was looking for directions, I wouldn't walk up to Christian. It'd be awkward and weird, and say 5th and Pine, and just And
if you came up to me and asked me that, I'd know exactly what you're talking about. We're talking about, okay, you're looking at a map of downtown Seattle, Bill, and here it is, and I pull it up my phone for you. So and then, I charge a lot for that service. I'm just saying.
So we want to make search more natural, more engaging, and just speak the language of the person that's actually performing that search. And one of the other key investments we've made is kind of the zero intent query. Just simply clicking in the search box brings you that information that's trending around you, So putting search to work for you. And the way I think about those classic hamster wheel examples is search used to be all about recovery, not discovery, meaning that it was all about refining. So to put it into context, I'm sure everybody's probably misplaced their car keys or their wallet or something at some given point in time. And the first thing that you do is you execute a search within your own mind. Where did I put my keys? That's kind of the beginning of your query. And then you continue to refine that query by, tracing your steps. Okay, I came home from work, I made a cup of coffee, I watched TV, I fed the dogs, I fed the kids. So you're constantly refining your query to find what you need. And that's kind of the classic example of search. And what we want search to be able to do is just tell you where your keys are. Not even having to type keys, just clicking in the search box, and you get all that information that's trending around you that you may have not previously had visibility into because you kind of had to become an expert in how to, define a query. And as people have probably experienced in their consumer lives, search results are very specific to how that query is formulated. A lot of people in the past have probably searched for something in the next day, typed those query terms slightly different and got different results. And then frustration kind of sets in, which is, I just looked for this yesterday and the site I was looking for came up. Where did it go?
Right. So,
we want to move beyond, those experiences that were really, groundbreaking in the 70s and 80s. But, it's just time to move forward.
Yeah, we were talking about before we started recording too, is that the semantics of when you talk about natural language and the terminology is like, what do you actually mean by that? I'd love just to be able to come in and it's kind of the Star Trek vision of the future of computer. Please help me with this, and it understands who I am. It understands the context of the question, the body of knowledge that it's pulling from, and to some level of interpretation of what I actually mean, what I actually want from that. Mm-hmm. Like, don't just give me what I've asked for, give me what I want.
Yeah. And to that extent, let me show you a couple of examples if I can.
Okay.
I will attempt to share my screen.
Good to go.
Great. So I'll start with our Bing endpoint. And as I mentioned, as we were talking about, not only did we want search to be coherent, but we wanted it to be ubiquitous. And I mentioned that it's available across our M365 apps and services, but at the same time, Bing, Edge, and Windows are all kind of endpoints. And so I'll go ahead and start with Bing because I already had it brought up in a browser window. So a couple of things, that we're doing is one, AI is a big kind of fundamental investment for us, particularly in the search space. So one of the things that we recently announced as of last week on Monday is we started rolling out what we call acronym answers. So inside, of the body of your company's knowledge, in all likelihood, there are quite a few acronyms being used in email and Word documents and on internal websites on your intranet.
I understand. Inside Microsoft, you're not allowed to move forward on a project unless you have an adequate acronym in place.
Definitely an adequate acronym and at least an 8-digit version.
Yes.
Identifier. So, that's right. One of the things that's hard is, figuring out what those things are. You're new to a company, or, you see an acronym in an email and you're trying to, interpret exactly what it is. So, at Microsoft, as I mentioned earlier, an acronym associated with me is MSAI. So with Microsoft Search, I can simply type in define MSAI, and I get what we call an acronym answer. So here's our Microsoft Search results up at the top, and the one that's relevant to me is the one up here, Microsoft Search Assistance and Intelligence. But because I'm a PhD and an Esquire, this one might be relevant as well. So or you've probably heard in the industry POR. What's the POR? So I could say define POR. and I can understand, you know, what that is. Or at Microsoft, one of the terms that we use a lot is MAL. You know, what's MAL? And you hear it talked about in meetings, so I can define what that is. So that's kind of cool. The other thing is really trying to find people. And as I mentioned, we want search to be a productivity tool. In many cases, you're sitting in a meeting, you're new to the company, or you're just looking for somebody with some expertise. And a coworker may say, oh, you need to talk to Sophia. And you're like, okay, Sophia. So I search for Sophia, and what I get back is the most contextually relevant Sophia to myself, which is Sophia Miller, Director of Communications. But, you know, this conversation was in the context of an engineering need. So who do I search for? Well, we make it easy. Search for Sophia the engineer. And, you know, I get Sophia Vergaris, who's a software engineer. But, you know, I'm looking at it and I'm like, that's not quite right, because Sophia's in City Center, which is one of our buildings in Bellevue. The Sophia I need is actually in London. So I can say Sophia the engineer in London. And I get Sophia Moda. And as you can see here, MSAI, one of the acronyms that we defined. So I know it's my closest relationship that kind of meets my intent. That's what we call a people-centric search. And basically what it uses is people attributes. One of the things that will be coming up soon is we're going to make it possible via the graph and some tenant settings to introduce additional people attributes to the people profile card. So you can bring in all of these cool attributes. So now that I've kind of showed you that, let me show you one more example since we're sitting here.
Hey, Bill, just a quick question. You know, one of my favorite tools, I don't remember the name of it, and you might, but remember there was a text-based tool back when I was an employee where you could look at somebody's acronym and it would show them within the tree all the way up to the CEO and then in relation to you. So you'd know, oh, we have the same vice president, but just in different legs of that tree. Do you have from this as well? Is like an organization? So you've got the organization. Does it allow you to go and make that connection to see where she is, Sophia is in relation to your role?
Yeah, indeed. Let me switch tabs real quick and see if this pops up.
Sorry, this is one of those things where it's one of those cool little capabilities other companies that I've worked with that I missed. Yeah. I missed having that capability, that ease.
Yeah, it's super helpful, you know, just in the context of not only finding people, but creating or identifying those relationships. So you should be able to see SharePoint now.
Nope, still seeing Sophia.
Perhaps I need to reshare, so bear with me. Pun intended.
Yes.
So share screen, and we're going to switch over to SharePoint really quick, and then we'll come back to Bing.
By the way, I noticed you got the Chiefs helmet. You're very in the now with.
I'm on top of things all the time.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, Contoso.
Yep. So here we are. We're in SharePoint now. One of the things that I mentioned, and you know, to those who may be watching, we are in the process of finalizing the rollout of Microsoft Search. So if you don't see the header in the suite navigation bar or the search box in the header of the suite nav, it will be coming to you shortly. And that's our visual cue that you have Microsoft Search available. So a lot of customers and people just in general ask, how do I know if I have Microsoft Search? The quickest way to identify that you have the capability in your tenant is that the search box moves from the application canvas, such as SharePoint in this case, up to your suite nav. So it makes itself prominent top and center. So anyway, clicking in the search box, as I mentioned earlier, brings that zero intent. And this evolves over time. We obviously use the graph in our substrate, you know, much like we had with Delve to deliver you contextually relevant information based on organizational relationships, frequency of collaboration with an individual, document sharing, all of these different signals that exist between anchors and objects. But I wanted to kind of address what you had mentioned is that organizational aspect. So I can do this one of two ways. Since Alan already showed up, I just performed a search for Alan, and I have Alan's people card. And as you can see here, not only do I have an even better organizational view, so I can see that Alan's director is Nestor, but I can also see who Alan works with frequently. So this goes beyond just showing those hierarchical relationships to, taking those signals from the graph and then deriving from that, who Alan's contacts are, because maybe that's really who I need. But I can drill in to organization, and here's what you had mentioned: being able to, find those commonalities and bring it all together. And I can work my way, from Lydia, for example, up to Patty Fernandez, or drill down from Patty and continue that. And then, of course, we also give you the option to, connect these organizational profiles, those derived from AAD, to LinkedIn as well. So one second, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to Bing and touch on the natural language piece really quick, since I am in demo mode. And to be honest, feeling pretty awesome right now because it's all been working. Not to jinx things, I'll continue to work. You mentioned natural language, and
it was actually back when you did that initial search where you you used a certain word where you were saying like define,
right?
And that's another thing that what a lot of people get that stuck on. If you don't use the right commands, the right terminology to find that, you might not find that result again.
Right.
In fact, Bill, it's kind of funny when I used to present on mention search within a topic. I actually brought up an experience. I'm sure you don't remember, but my first week back in 2006, working with you, we're on the same team, and I was asking you for some information, and you kept telling me, it's Christian, it's in SharePoint, go look for it. And I'm like, I'm going, and I'm feeling stupid. I'm looking for it. And it was the end of that was that you went in, I stood in your office after you repeatedly telling me where the information was, and you went, oh, you don't have permissions. I was like, great. I think I spent like 2 hours feeling stupid, going back, and you were probably getting frustrated with me, and someone had not given the right permissions for me to get access to that. But
that's unsurprising.
Just kind of a funny story. That was my first experience of working with Bill. Yeah.
Well, at least it was a relatively positive one.
Yes. Yeah. It was innocuous that time. Yes.
It was an eye opener.
Yeah.
You probably thought the document didn't even exist, and I was just sending you back to.
I thought it was a test. I was being tested.
So natural language, just to touch on that really quick. So one of the things that we had talked about at Ignite kind of briefly was this idea that we had at Microsoft that we're bringing to Microsoft Search. Right now we're in private preview, and hopefully by March timeframe, we'll be able to open it up for public preview. But we talked about this concept that we call Project Turing. And basically what we do with Project Turing is we enable not only natural language search, but we use machine reading comprehension. So what all that gobbledygook means is that you can ask search a question, such as, how much can I spend on a meal for travel? Today, if you wanted to find an answer for that, you probably search for expense policy, travel policy, right? You're putting together keywords, term-based matching.
Right.
What Turing's intent is to do is allow you to ask that question, much like you would ask somebody a question if you were just walking past their office. But at the same time, we use machine reading comprehension to extract the right paragraph from the most relevant document and deliver that as an answer. We do that through what we call the Microsoft Generic Intent Encoder. And basically what it does is it encodes a bunch of different phrases into this semantic vector. And that way, smaller, similar sentences that are used from a search perspective, all will have closer vector representation. So you can ask a question in 5 or 6 different ways, and we place them all into this vector. Imagine a thought bubble. And then we're able to use machine reading to deliver the answer. So let's use that as an example. How much, and apologies, I have a cold that I inherited. So how can I spend, or how much can I spend for a meal during travel? And this is super useful because, that expense report or travel policy, both of those queries might return completely different results just because it's using keyword matching. So what I can do is ask this question, and you'll notice here from our Microsoft policy information, I actually get expense reports or expenses while on a trip during a business trip. And then here's where it extracts the right paragraph from this policy. During a business trip, you're entitled to reimbursement for lunch and dinner, blah, blah, blah. But basically what you can see here is the words spend, meal, and travel don't exist inside of this document itself. The other thing, not only can we use natural language up here, machine reading comprehension right here, but if we just look at this first sentence, we also use semantic understanding. And that semantic understanding is that aha moment to where our search engine is smart enough to be able to say, okay, they're searching for meals and travel and spend. All of those are semantically similar to expenses, business trip, reimbursement, lunch, and dinner. So very similarly, I can say, how many days can I take off for jury duty? And I get jury duty company policy. So here I get the answer. And you notice what we do is we also bold out the answer. So you can focus on what's important. You get 10 days. And I'll give you one last example. Where can I exercise on camps? So this time I intentionally injected a spelling error. But again, through semantic understanding, again, we're able to deliver the right result. We understood this first portion of your query, so that's when we create the intent, and then we can say campus. Since I'm in Bing, I'll do one last thing. I did mention that we want search to be actionable. Right. And by being actionable, we want you to be able to do something. So I can say monthly retail stores overview. And you'll notice I get a Power BI result. And directly via search, I can launch Power BI. So that's really cool. So we're able to make it.
I was thinking about your expense report. It should give you an option right there, give you the information of how do I, how much can I expense per meal, and what a logical action might be to open or to create a new expense report right there.
Yeah. And basically, what all of what I just showed you is kind of what's behind this concept that we have called Project Turing. But basically, what the intent is trying to provide a deeper understanding of search queries with this generic intent encoder. And basically what we do is we have this neural network that maps queries with similar click results to similar representations. Again, that semantic vector, that I was talking about. So, what that enables is it captures what people, expect to see and what they want to click, as opposed to just, that query's semantic meaning. So it's super cool tech. As I mentioned, we're in private preview today as we use a transfer learning model, which means we can train our model against public data, and then we can apply that model to enterprise data. So the model doesn't have to be trained specifically for your organization. We can train it at scale using public knowledge and then, world knowledge, and then we can just easily bring that to your enterprise and continue to allow it to train there. So private preview is more or less leveraged to, help us train those models. And then over the course of time, what our intent is to, allow for further progression. We'll open it up to public preview, and then we'll go on from there. So pretty cool.
But Bill, so that kind of, that's great. Being able to go and leverage from the broader industry-wide, information, and that's almost like having those best bets. Mm-hmm. As long, and then and being able to start there as an enterprise, and be able to leverage that, that greater knowledge, that learning that the system has done. But the there could be then nuances, differences, inside the organization of how language is used or the type of data that people go and access. Part of the, I guess, I would say concern is too strong of a word for it, but in my experience, a lot of those tailored experiences and those results, and yes, it's more intelligent. We're talking about something that's different than what we've used in the past. But so I had the same feedback for like Project Cortex, and a lot of people very excited about the possibilities that are opened up, by that project and what's being worked on there. And my feedback is that, I need to understand what the administrative, the tailoring, the experiences, the admin experience for that. How does the system then go in and learn from? If you're bringing back, based on my request, here are the results that most people are asking for. Yeah, but if that's not exactly what I need and I'm drilling, then you've got the other search results that are below it that might be the long tail of content. Is I go and click 5 down below of what was automated up front, and I actually want something that I find down the results below. How quick is that to learn and to adjust to people that are going outside of that tailored experience? Hopefully that makes sense. Am I using the right natural language terms?
Yeah. I think one of the things that we do, particularly with Turing, as we work on confidence, which is, you could easily say relevance, is that through Turing, you notice that the results were up at the top of the page, and we refer to that as being a mainline result. And those mainline results show up in SharePoint and Office, and what a mainline result is when we have an experiment like Turing, we're going to give you that mainline result up there, but we're still going to give you all of the related terms or results underneath. And we're not just going to give you the Turing result. The Turing result is, it's the highest confidence result that our model can deliver. But at the same time, we recognize, absent 100% confidence, we still want to allow you to have that traditional search experience as well. So we do have that fallback mechanism. So right underneath mainline, we start to deliver, all of those other things that may be relevant. And then, of course, if you're entering via the Bing entry point, you get web as well as work. In Office and in SharePoint and in Windows, you're going to get those just your corporate internet results.
Well, there's that. So I started my career as business analyst, as a tech writer. Back in the early 90s, I was working for EDS, and one of the things that I would go and do is that I was, as an analyst, I would go in and work with engineering teams when documentation changed. I would literally go into an offsite beacon storage, find the relevant box and the binders, swap out pages. So our authoritative documentation, if anybody went looking for that, like it was the latest and greatest. It was that version of it. Of course, it was. I helped digitize some of that effort as well. Back, we were talking 92, 93. So in the early days, didn't have the search engines. We'd have a lot of the other capabilities. But my first portal experience at the phone company, worked for Pacific Bell, was doing some similar things where we were going in and making sure that the authoritative data, the majority of the interactions with that early portal that we were building was to specific bodies of knowledge, to specific tools, to specific resources. Mm-hmm. What's evolved and changed from that approach to provide that knowledge, of course, with the dramatic reduction in the cost of storage and I think that there's, even though people don't fully understand that they're doing this, a lot of organizations do, is that we don't know the future value of a lot of the knowledge, a lot of the information, a lot of the raw data that we're pulling from our various systems. So let's just store everything, and eventually we'll find some value out of that. Mm-hmm. And we just have to be careful that I keep referring to it as that long tail of content, is not lost, that we dumb down our knowledge by only providing those best bets view of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, it makes total sense.
Anyway, that was more soapbox than a statement of what you've shown, but it's but I think it just that's part of what I think people need to understand is that the system is continually looking at
Yeah.
the new knowledge that's coming in, and it needs to be tuned to be able to realize that hey, new knowledge coming in may displace some of what has been that part of that standard result set.
Yeah, yeah, and that's again, that kind of comes back to our fundamentals, which is growing for the future, which is why we have a lot of these different experiments. Why when initially we had talked about Microsoft Search being available to Microsoft 365, and it was more or less a walled garden, but we came to recognize that knowledge can exist anywhere. Like this particular example, searching in SharePoint for marketing, there's my mainline result, the most relevant answer, which is the campaign event site. I get a variety of documents. I get people profiles, so I can just hover over Deborah, and then I can take action, see Deborah's trending files that I have access to, LinkedIn, start a chat, or send an email. But the other thing is we're bringing custom verticals into it. So I can search our I can search our wiki, for example. So Bing Wiki, and find wiki content related to that, or Contoso web content. So this might be my intranet and different web articles or something, or search across internal news published in SharePoint. So I've got my marketing lunch. So yeah, I think we're taking a different approach based on what you mentioned on your soapbox. Thinking of it differently. Obviously, we see Cortex as kind of that evolution as well. And Cortex effectively is kind of baselined in Microsoft Search and AI. It's kind of we're the driving force behind what that presentation layer is. Using AI to do a lot of the topic mining, knowledge mining work, and then leveraging search to provide that contextual relevance. So pretty cool stuff.
That is very cool. Well, so you talked about this still being in preview. People that aren't involved in that is there any way for people to still get involved, or is it basically we're waiting for stuff to be kind of announced in next steps, or?
Yeah. So where we're at is couple of rough timelines. Is for Microsoft Search, we announced general availability in May at the SharePoint conference, and we started rolling it out at that time, initially to targeted release, and then we started to roll out worldwide. We, as of about a month ago, we're about 10% of prod. We're going to be accelerating that over the next couple of weeks. So with hopes to be worldwide by end of February. So today we're at the 4th. So hopefully by the end of this month, by the end of the month of February, we'll deliver Microsoft Search worldwide. And you'll know in SharePoint because that search box will move to the header, same in Office.com and in OneDrive. For Project Turing, for the private preview, we've kind of locked that down. So we're still getting some nominations coming in. People saw the announcement on Twitter via the Microsoft Search handle to nominate their organization. We had capacity to take about 50 customers. We had about 1,000 responses. We finally nailed down that 50. So the next opportunity for Project Turing is going to be probably in the March timeframe. We'll open it up more broadly as soon as we're able to validate that our models are working appropriately.
So people, what's the handle to follow to pay attention to that in case people do want to get involved?
At Microsoft Search.
Okay.
So we have our own search handle. We've got our own YouTube. We've got our own user voice, microsoftsearch.uservoice.com. So we don't have Instagram yet.
Oh man, so the kids aren't gonna care about what's happening with Microsoft Search. So
no, we're working.
What you guys are thinking?
We're working on our influencer. We're working on our influencer status right now. So we're watching a lot of YouTube videos to figure out how to do it right. And then, of course, so hopefully in March, some of that comes to bear. And then we've got some super exciting related announcements around the Microsoft Graph that'll pop up in early March as well.
Okay.
So we've got a pretty active roadmap over the next couple of weeks as we lead into build in the SharePoint conferences.
A lot going on, and then I know they'll be talking about that. It looks like we've got 30 people that'll be heading over after SharePoint conference happening in May in Vegas, and then you have the European Collab Summit that's happening over in Mainz, Germany, and I think I saw 30 or more Microsoft people heading over to that as well. So yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a marketing blitz. So
just the season.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Bill, really appreciate your time. I'll be sure to provide links to each of those in the associated blog post, of course. But people want to find out more about you, get in touch with you. What are the best ways to reach you?
A couple of options is you can go to wbaer.net, and via that, or you can go to wbaer.io, either one. That'll take you to just a landing page. It has links to me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and elsewhere. So if you're interested in following me on any of those, or you have some comments, you have something you want to share, definitely navigate there and do that. If you want to reach out to me directly, my email is wbaer@microsoft.com, or william.baer@microsoft.com, or alternatively, billb@microsoft.com. So any of those will get you there. My guidance is always flag as important because my inbox is a mess. I am a piler versus a filer. So I use those little visual cues to manage the chaos.
I do think it's funny that I, for years in presentations that are relevant to the topic, give out your email. Like, you should get in touch with Bill Baer if you've got questions about this. And people laugh, and I'm like, no, seriously, people, feel free, to contact. So Bill's approachable.
Yeah. I don't talk to that many humans on a day-to-day basis. So it's always exciting. So if you do ask a question about search and I answer your question, but then I type an additional 3 or 4 paragraphs letting you know what my dogs are up to and the weather, it's because I don't talk to many people.
Bill's looking for friends, people. That's what he's saying. So
exactly. Pen pals.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Bill, hey, we'll appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you in the next couple of weeks, and I'll see you at the MVP Summit in a few weeks.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. For MVPs that may be watching, tons of exciting stuff.
I'm sure it's going to be action-packed.
Totally recommend it.
Yeah. In fact, I think the search between what you're doing on search and with Project Cortex, some of the most exciting topics. I think people are really jazzed to find out the latest, what's been going on.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And it's snowing today, so hopefully that dies down.
Yeah, it's snowing here as well. So good times. All right. Hey, Bill. Well, thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks a lot.